Every day I wake up and I feel so alive. I think to myself.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cheeky Cauldron podcast. My name is Mai Cherie and I am joined by my co-host Tamika and Ani. And as you know, no topic is too spicy for the pot. Last week, we dove deep into cults with our special guest, Mackenzie Janae. And today, we are going to continue the conversation on spirituality and religion with the topic, breaking free from the chains of religion and living your most authentic life. We have a special guest in the studio today to help us unpack this topic. But before we do that, I want us to get into our restaurant of the week. And the restaurant of the week is Casa de Luz. Casa has been an Austin staple for as long as I've lived in Austin, which is 18 years. When I think of Casa, I just don't think of it as a restaurant. I think of it as an experience. And I love to go there for like my Zen time. And the Casa de Luz philosophy is all about wellness and community. And on their website, it's referred to as Casa de Luz Village, which supports holistic mind, spirit, health, body, soul, all of that. And then they also have heart-centered events around where you can do workshops and all of that. So where we ate actually in the cafe, it's all about whole life nutrition. And I love the quote on their site. It says, "When diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. And when diet is correct, medicine is of no need."
Mm-hmm.
I really love that.
Yeah.
I really love that. So the cafe serves breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it's all organic, vegan, gluten-free, refined oil-free, and then refined sugar-free.
And delicious.
And delicious. And guess what? You can eat all of that for the price of $15. It was only $15 to have an entire meal there, which is really awesome. They have a great staff and they are friendly and they're just so community driven. I love it. I like to go there to eat if I want to cleanse before I go on my cleanse or after I go off a cleanse because the food is so clean. And so I really love that. So let's kind of get into it. And also indoor, outdoor seating, community. And so you can all kind of come together. So let's roll and let's show them a little bit of our experience when we ate there.
That's the pretty entryway. The cafeteria, the food.
Mm-hmm. It's
all
cafeteria style.
Very clean.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, those were the yummy desserts.
Yes, there were some really good desserts.
And it was
the
a
grounds are
gorgeous
beautiful.
day.
He manages it, and I love the way they do everything. It's really neat. Artwork.
Oh, there goes the pecan pie.
Oh, yeah.
So it was really good. It didn't taste like pecan pie, but it was delicious. And these are one of the little gardens.
Basking in the sun.
Yeah. We had fun.
Praying mantis. I love that last pose. So what were your thoughts on Casa?
Well, I've been here longer than you in Austin, like 24 years. And I love Casa de Luz. Anytime I feel like I just need give my body a jolt of goodness, I go there.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it's a community place. I actually got my 200-hour yoga training at Casa de Luz.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, I really like that place. Although, if I'm going to have some dessert, I'm probably not going to have it at Casa de Luz. So I was not sold on that pecan pie.
It was so good.
Or any of those desserts in the window.
So I loved it. I love the food. I love knowing you can eat whatever you want and you know it's good for your body. I actually stumbled into it when my son was doing baseball.
Yeah.
a while
The
ago.
Phil across the street.
And I was just looking for something for us to eat or whatever, and I was like, "What is this place? Is this like a cult place?"
Yeah.
Like I was like, "What?"
It looks like it,
It
though,
looks
doesn't
like
it?
it. So then I left. So the first time I actually ate was during that, and I thought it was really good. So
Yeah.
it was pretty.
So, Mathias, that's one of the parts of our podcast is that we go and we eat at different restaurants, and then we chop it up about the restaurants. So.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And you love that mushroom coffee, that alchemy.
Oh, the alchemy coffee.
The mushroom
was delicious.
coffee was really great. They really
Go to Alchemy, get
alchemize
the
some
mushroom
great
coffee.
drinks.
That was my favorite thing about the whole experience.
Yes.
I should have had
I love
some.
it.
I didn't have
That was
some.
really good.
But I was full, though, so.
Okay. Well, there we have it. Casa de Luz, a winner and a staple in Austin, Texas. So now it's time for us to get into our spicy topic of the day and introduce our very special guest. The topic for today is breaking free from the chains of religion and living your most authentic life. We have a very special guest in the studio, and he is going to help us dive a little bit deeper into this topic. He built himself from a Fortune 500 marketing specialist to a digital artist with a passion for visual arts, special effects, and motion design. He is a motivational speaker, intimacy coach, and an international best-selling author of The 5 Most Important Things You Don't Learn in School. He is
The Vanna White moment.
He is a dear friend and one of the most dynamic people I've had the pleasure of spending time with. And I am thrilled to have him in the studio today. Ladies, please give a warm welcome for Mathias Omotola.
Yay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. We all do. Okay, so let's jump right in. Mathias, you have been very successful in your professional career and also in your personal life, despite the cards you were handed. And like me, you grew up as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. You grew up in that household. So these last few weeks, we've been talking about religion, and we haven't got to talk about Jehovah's Witnesses, which is kind of, there's over, I think, 3 million Jehovah's Witnesses in the world. So this is a religion that had a lot of rules, and the success had to do more around what was in the JW bubble, as opposed to how we navigate to have a successful life in the real world. And I feel like it was one of the mottos in the religion, to be in the world, but not of the world. And so if you decided to step out on, into something else, then you were considered worldly.
Good old worldly.
Good old worldly. So yet here you are winning in life and actually living your best life. So I have a 2-part question for you. 1, are you still a Jehovah's Witness?
No.
Okay.
That was easy.
And then 2, at what point in your life did you make the conscious choice to create a different life for yourself and break free from the chains of the Jehovah's Witness ideology?
So, well, first off, from the beginning, I wasn't into it. Like, as soon as I went to the first Kingdom Hall, it did not feel good to my system. And I don't know, as a child, it's just, you have certain feelings that didn't feel good. Now, I am not, my father still is to this day, and, all the power for it, because I feel that he's still a great man. I still feel that there's good people within the religion and things like that. So I don't knock it entirely, because I find problems with all of them. So it's not just like, oh, this one is terrible. Yeah. I find flaws and good things in all of them. So, but for me, I found that the lack of individual self-expression and your connection to the divine or God or Christ was something that was minimized instead of maximized.
Absolutely.
Right? Mm-hmm. So by having that minimized, it really hurt your ability to express and grow in the unique way that you were created. Mm-hmm. And now, I didn't know that when I was a child, but it just felt like a cult. Even some churches feel like cults. Like everything just kind of feels like a cult where obedience is more important than passion. Right. So I got that. And that was something that was really, I was just like, okay, everybody is kind of pushed down and just in a single file line instead of your full expression of spirit.
And living authentically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
How old were you though? You said
Probably 5. Like I just remember my
That was
first
my
time.
question.
Yeah.
so at 5, you
it just
stepped
didn't-
into the church and you were just like,
No, this place is just, it's not a good feeling. It's, you know, if you go into a graveyard or somewhere scary as a child, you know, you can just go someplace and be like, it's kind of eerie to me.
Yeah.
And it's just off. So my system is...
Felt the oppressive nature.
Yeah, it just did not feel like the joy of God. Let's talk about that, right?
Yeah.
So if you're feeling like this is supposed to be a place where you're connected to the divine, you're supposed to be connected to, you know, what I would consider, you know, God is love, and we're connected to the source of love. It didn't feel like the nurturing love of the mother or the powerful love of the father. I didn't feel either of them there.
yeah.
For me, I think it was around the age of like 9 or 10 where I felt myself kind of out of my body, where I was like, why am I here? And like everyone around me, I felt like they were just out of their minds because it didn't make sense to me. Like I feel like I was around that age when things just didn't make sense, but I knew I had to follow along because I wasn't of age to be able to ever get out of it as of yet, you know? So that's interesting that you knew so early. I think it just all depends on what's happening. I mean, I felt the love. My mom was like such a lover. And so I did feel love and I did feel community. But then I was like, this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life.
You know, one of the things with that is like, I felt that there was more, you know, there was more focus on obedience than connection. Right.
You must obey these rules.
It was more obedience than anything else. So that's the part that really just didn't
resonate.
And I felt there was more focus on obedience than understanding. It was just, if I could regurgitate certain things from the Bible, if I could do these different things, but if I don't necessarily integrate them into my life, they're okay with it.
Yes.
They're okay with me just, you know, operating with obedience. And that can only get you so far.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's why I feel that most people break away from religion is because they're just looking for your obedience.
Yes.
And as soon as you're looking for deeper understanding, you start questioning things, you start looking like a heretic, or you're questioning the different belief systems.
Yes.
It's kind of like an employee who wants to do more. It's like, oh, I'm really interested in it. I really want to know all about it. Then all of a sudden you're starting to get shut down. You don't feel that you can grow within that space anymore.
Absolutely.
And, you know, you don't. So I felt that growth, it was very stifling to my growth as a spirit.
Well, let's talk about that stifling growth and when you decide to make that exit. And there is a lot of shame around that for being in a religion like Jehovah's Witness or any organized religion or cult for that matter. And I think, for example, like with my brother growing up, when he was 19, he finally decided to leave. I think my dad had this idea in his mind that he was going to follow after the footsteps of him. My dad was an elder in the congregation, very involved. He helped actually build that Kingdom Hall at the time. And my mom and my dad were missionaries. So it was a huge part of of our life and my dad's life. And so he felt that his firstborn son was supposed to follow in his footsteps. Well, when my brother wrote a letter to the elders in the congregation and said, look, thank you for the experience, but I need to,
but I'm out.
but I'm out. And what was so sad about it, usually people just like leave. Like he wrote a letter. He sat down and took the time to write a letter and was honorable by doing that. And he was excommunicated and shunned.
Absolutely.
And so my dad was like, okay, well, guess what? My way or the highway, you need to get out. And you're not allowed to have contact with any of us. So we were not allowed to talk to my brother anymore because he wrote this letter. And so my brother was brave. But what about the people that are kids, the youth that are not brave enough to say, I don't want any part of this because they don't want to be excommunicated. You know, that's the part that's like really challenging. So the question is, and that was a rhetorical question, but did you experience any shame when you decided to leave, and how were you able to overcome that?
Well, a lot of it just came from my father. you know, and I really loved and respected my father, but most of all feared him for a long time at a young age. So I feel that once you're no longer ruled by fear and you start moving towards a different frequency of emotion, that's when things really break down. And I feel the religion does the same thing. They're leading you with the fear of being excommunicated, being shamed, right? So all that is the fear of disconnection from family. And this goes to our primal need of connection as a human being. So they play on the worst of it, right? Yes. They're always telling us what can go wrong if you're excommunicated. And in our biology, it's terrifying. Oh, yeah. On a cellular level, when we're kicked out of the tribe, you know, back in the day, we're kicked out of the tribe. We have to go out into the wilderness alone. We have to go do all those things alone. Yeah, our chances for survival go way down. So they're playing on our very survival, and they use that as a threat, right? It's like, this is going to be a psychological threat from the day you get here. You're going to be out of the family. You're going to be out of resources. You're going to have to do it all on your own, right? That doesn't feel loving to me, right? So I get my way or the highway when it comes to values, when it comes to respect, but when it comes to spirit, instead of really understanding someone, really connecting with someone to understand why is their spirit not resonating here?
Yes.
What is it? Why isn't their spirit soaring? Because they are a child of God.
Absolutely.
And I see them as such, but the message is not reaching them. What's wrong?
Yes.
And instead of just looking at the child, they change it around to make it look like, oh, it's the child that's the problem, instead of how we're reaching out to them, right? That there's something wrong with their spirit.
Absolutely.
Instead of...
And how is that Christ-like behavior if the foundation of religion is built on following the examples of Christ?
It's not. Well, once again, you're not leading from a place of love. You're leading with fear. Fear is, yes, you can be God-fearing, but there's like the two gods of the Bible. There's the one that's going to smite you, and then there's the infinite love of God. I lean more towards an infinite love of God, but understand the power of God and the power of spirit, which is fearful. When you're out of alignment, yeah, you're afraid, because when your spirit goes down a dark path, it can keep going. All right. That's one of the things is that's where I see it more than just this threatening, lightning bolt from above and, plagues and, all the wonderful, horrible things of the Bible.
That would scare anybody.
Yeah. It's terrifying.
As a child.
But for me, I had, brothers and sisters that kind of rebelled ahead of me. So they kind of like softened the blow. So, I was just kind of quiet, biding my time, because I was, at 5 years old, drawing in, listening to the Kingdom Hall and all the teachings. And it was just like, this seems whack. This seems off. I'm just going to draw pictures now. And I can feel some type of self-expression, right? Because while that was being stifled for everybody else and you're just being programmed to regurgitate, I was finding my way through creativity and self-expression in drawing or writing, creating stories. And so, shout out to my brothers and sisters for kind of rebelling, my brother and sister. Yeah.
The path for you.
So they kind of softened my dad up a little bit. And for me, I wasn't really rebellious, but there was things I wanted to do, like sports, which we weren't, but my brother paved the way with that. And my sister with dating, she,
So with the Jehovah's Witness, you can't play sports?
That was kind of a worldly activity. At least it was
worldly
told. That's considered worldly.
Okay. Yeah, and it paid for my college. So my dad didn't have I didn't have just like a college fund saved up. So I was been under crippling debt. So I had to earn that through my own. Through my own means, which was through athletics. Otherwise, I would have been in a different situation. But, by the time I was 16, we had some internal family dramas and fights with my dad. And I remember it was around that time, it was the first time I really heard, "I love you." At 16 years old from my father. And I remember that. And it was after a serious fight with my older sister. And she, talk about feeling disenfranchised. And I feel that that's something that has kind of plagued some of us, in the family to a certain degree, not feeling the love of the father. And we didn't really hear it until much later.
Was he raised as a Jehovah's Witness?
No, he was raised in the jungle of Nigeria. But at 15, he went to Cambridge University, where I think it was his uncle who was in the religion who brought him over. So he's extremely intelligent, in a small tribal village, probably 200-300 people. And so he he wrote letters, and he was inducted into like Cambridge at 15, and then he was in the religion at 15. So I don't fault him. And even talking with my siblings, is I would understand at 15 years old, getting programmed into a religion, and that's your way to success and succeed.
And what was his spiritual understanding before he was programmed in?
I mean, I have an interesting, family history. My grandfather, his father was the chief of the tribe, so he kind of gave up the chieftaincy and being in line for that to go to Cambridge. To go. And but my father was born from second wife. So it's a very different community. It's like second wife. My grandfather had, 2 wives and several concubines and ran a village in our...
Was there a religion in the village?
Not specifically, not that I'm aware of as far as like how it was taught. And how would I know? I wasn't raised. I wasn't told about that. I had to learn about it. But our ancestry goes back to ancient Egypt and Ethiopia. And my sister actually tracked our lineage all the way back, and she worked at African Ancestry. So, and we're all, very successful. Yeah. Everybody has higher degrees, some master degrees, some are doctors. My brother's a doctor. My sister has a master's in anthropology. So very intelligent. My other sister was valedictorian from Columbia. So everybody is like very, very successful despite, once again. But I think, my dad worked really hard to get us where he was. And some of the principles and values that he got from the religion, I think helped him be successful in life, even though it didn't feel as loving and nurturing. It was, just really kind of putting in the work.
Yeah. So quick question. How many brothers and sisters do you have?
So I have an older brother, older sister, and a younger sister.
Okay. And are any of you still in the faith?
No.
No?
No.
And I think we just had our other guest on, and he's an atheist, but he's a scientist and he's a teacher. And he talked about, I think, that higher education and that higher, brain power creates a, desire to be curious outside of that, the faith. And so, like you're saying, all of your brothers and sisters are smart and they're this and that.
I also think the reason why education wasn't big with Jehovah's Witnesses is because if you start to think,
so you don't
if
question.
you start to critically think about, hey, this doesn't make sense, then you're outside of the religion and we want to bring you in because that's the whole purpose. We want to have as many people in the flock as possible. So if you start to think about what's happening out there in the world and start to make, a life for yourself and truly live authentic, then, oh, no, we can't have that because then you won't be brainwashed.
Yeah.
And so speaking
I have
of
to
that,
say really quick, my aunt is a Jehovah's Witness and she's been for as long as I can remember. She was on her way. She went to Xavier University. She was going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And she quit. And I don't know if that was due to her being a Jehovah's Witness, but, I just think about it sometimes. I'm like, Auntie, you could have been a doctor. But she's Jehovah's Witness. They're having some world thing or something.
Oh, convention.
She sent it to me because you can tap in online. I used to go to the Kingdom. did you know that?
I think so.
I think I might have told you.
But it sounds like your father still pushed higher education, even within.
Yeah, it wasn't so much as pushed. I could have told him I'm going to be a full-time pioneer, and I probably would have been supported way more than anything else.
Oh, yeah.
So it was something that was valued, but he did want us to be happy, but I think his training, as a Jehovah's Witness kind of precluded that. Now he's, a grandfather, a couple times over, and, I can feel the love of my dad now, so luckily it's, I feel that over time, it hasn't been just the religion. I feel that in time you get closer to God or the divine anyway as you live, like your spirit's getting ready.
That was going to be my next question. What is your belief system now that you've left the church?
So I don't follow organized religion, but I do have a spiritual path that is, a lot of Buddhism, Christianity, a number of them. So if you ever read Autobiography of a Yogi, so a lot of those teachings and practices where I see spirituality as a very practical thing, and either you can or you can't do certain things. So my spirituality, there's a high level of integrity. If I'm keeping with that integrity, then I'm operating in alignment with my spirit. If I'm lying, if I'm deceiving, if I'm doing any of those sins, then I'm out of alignment. But it's something that I know very well because I know that connection to spirit and love. So it's a frequency more than a dogma. Yeah.
I love that. And I want to give kudos to my parents as well, because even though I grew up this way, I do believe we need to think about some of the good things and the positive things that we gain from being in a religion like this. And one of the things is when I used to go and knock on doors as a child, I was afraid of doing that when I was younger. And then I gained this confidence. And now as an adult, I can talk to anybody about anything from any background, any religion. And I can do that with confidence. I've built a network of like friends, families, and colleagues based on going and knocking on doors about, the good cheer and bringing this whole dynamic of like this saving your soul. Yeah. Like we need to save your soul in the kingdom of God. Yeah, the kingdom of God and saving your soul. And the salesman skills, like, selling and all of that. So I think the question is, are there any key takeaways from growing up as a Jehovah's Witness that you've been able to use in your professional career?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, once again, the tenets of Christ, when you take a look at, I love like 1 Corinthians 1:13. I had it as a quote on my wall growing up even, which was the definition of love. Like love is long suffering, it's kind, and it goes through it, love never fails. It rejoices with the truth. Those tenets that I really understood, I didn't see really necessarily practice. So I love, like, so much of the Bible is beautiful. So many of the stories, the parables, the values. It's like most things. The concept is excellent. The execution is terrible.
Yeah. Trash.
It's like communism. It's like, oh, everybody has equal this, that, and that. Concept-wise, it's like, oh, great. We don't have hungry people. Execution, terrible.
Yes.
Like, it zooms everything. Like, in history, and I feel that's the same way with a lot of religion, is at least for the most of the people. Now, what's happening on the upper scales of, like, okay, how do we, get more people? What techniques do we use? Do we use an inquisition? Do we use, like, what are we doing? It's like, okay, well, some of that is absolutely terrible. And I feel that people will use that for nefarious reasons. And I don't feel that, the people at the top are necessarily more aligned with God or the values of love. And I feel that, the human aspects of it get corrupted because with, absolute power comes,
Absolute.
Yeah, religion is big business.
Absolute.
Like,
what are the corruption?
Absolute corruption.
Yeah.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah,
that's it. Absolute.
When you say the people at the top, they're actually really great at running a business. Like,
there you go.
That's one of the main things you're going to learn from these people.
Oh yeah.
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 And that's one of the things is, so back to your question, which was.
Oh, yeah. So basically, what are the key takeaways?
Yeah, the key takeaways. So find the values. My key takeaway is, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Use your critical thinking skills that often, in repressed, any religion that represses you, you're not taught to be a critical thinker. You're taught to be an obedient worker.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely,
worker for Christ or worker for God, however it's going to be. Look at the values of it and then dive into that. Is there more that can be extracted? Because there's usually a beautiful nectar of wisdom within these parables and things like that, and how you can apply it to your life to make it beautiful. Look at those tools, remove the dogma, because when you remove all of that, there are some underlying tools across all religions that I feel unify us in, looking at us as one family of divine beings. I feel that. But we just don't take the time to do it, and we spend more time on what makes us different than what aligns us as children of God.
The 5 most important things you don't learn in school: essential knowledge and tools for success in modern society.
Yes.
Ooh. So we briefly talked about you being an athlete. And when I read your book, I didn't actually know this, but you were an athlete in high school, star athlete. And then you had a major injury, with the meniscus, right? Your
ACL, meniscus.
Yeah, your ACL. Yeah, you tore your ACL.
What sport? Y'all just saying athlete. We want
No,
I was an
basketball.
all-around, I was an
He was
all-around athlete. So track and field, football, and basketball, and actually even gymnastics my first year. So I was all
Okay,
around.
but what did you go to school for?
My scholarship was for football.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got a full ride. I was full ride athlete, University of Iowa, but I was being recruited as a sophomore already.
I just said
Yes.
gymnastics that way because you're so tall.
Oh yeah, no, it was great. It was great. Well, that was my freshman year, and then after that, I was told that's ridiculous. You're not going to go anywhere. And I was like,
Yeah, because
okay.
you need to be pocket size.
You know,
Gymnastics.
So, but that strength, agility, and everything else helped me translate that. And football was my focus, but track and field, I set some school records and things like that, and went to get a full ride scholarship to the University of Iowa. Yeah, and then finished at Illinois State.
Love it. So I love that your book is focusing specifically on working with youth, and because the next generation, they are our next generation of like leaders. And so I like that you wrote this so that they have the tools to be successful and live a life authentically. And circling back around to you being an athlete, when you got injured, it sounds like that injury was the catalyst for this book that was going to happen later in life. And can you share that story of like how
experience?
That came into
Yeah,
fruition?
absolutely. It's what I call a lay, a LAE, which is a life-altering event. And usually all of us have one. Mm-hmm. It could be a death in the family. It could be a death of a loved one. It could be, a change of your job, or something collapses instantaneously, or a belief that you ultimately thought was true that just shifted. Mm-hmm. Right. So any of these things, which I consider a life-altering event, they mark us. It kind of creates a whole new series of pathways and choices that we can make that help us develop. And at 16, I already had thousands of people screaming my name.
Mm.
When you think about that
cool.
from a young man, and ego and all that. Yeah. So it was like, Omotola. So hearing the rafters.
Wow.
Chanting your name. My father didn't even come to my games. And that's another interesting thing. So here I am trying to bring honor and glory, but it's not honor and glory of God through religion.
Yes,
so it
totally.
didn't really mean anything to him. Fair. Fine. That's how you wrote. But so to me, that was a really big deal. And I was already getting offer letters. And I tore my ACL and meniscus practicing in discus. And so it was in the off season. And, and as a young kid, I thought I was invincible. Mm-hmm. But when I got hurt, I knew that this was something different. Yes. It was really something that caught my attention deeper within myself, where I'm hopping to the trainer's office. And then when I find out what it is and that I'm going for surgery, and I'm, in the hospital, my dad's holding my hand and I'm about to go under anesthesia, and he's a nurse anesthetist. So he's been helping people go under surgery for years. And, my uncle's going to be working on me. And, so I'm going in on one side and I wake up on the other side, and just in pain, confusion, and like immobility. And it's literally like a whole different timeline I wake up into. Mm. And it was during my recovery where I was alone in a hospital room for like 3 days. My mom would come visit and I would get some visitation, but it was on the second day and I'm on morphine. And, I woke up, I'm looking at my leg and it's on this device that's automatically moving it. And there's a drainage tube where there's like blood and everything. I have 115 plus staples in my knee and all around. And it's just looking terrifying to me. But so much of my identity was caught up in athletics. Mm-hmm. 16 years, 16 rotations around the sun, and I'm getting all this praise, all this energy. People are knowing me, being written up in the local paper and everything else. And now I'm thinking that's gone.
Talk about existential crisis.
Yeah.
Right. So here I am.
At 16.
That's gone. So I'm on the hospital bed on the, on the morphine button, in pain, confusion. And I ask myself, if I can't play football, then who am I? And I heard a voice say, "Do you really want to know?"
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And I said,
"Wow.
Show me." And so then I couldn't see, and said, "Okay, if you can't see, who are you?" And I was like, wow, okay. And if you can't hear, and I went silent. So as I'm really thinking about this, I'm actually feeling this and experiencing this physiologically. I'm going silent, can't see. Like if you ever closed your eyes, covered your ears, and it starts forcing you to go internal. And then I was like, okay, if you can't walk, what if this wasn't this? What if it was actually you're paralyzed? from the neck down. You can't move at all. And then I was like, okay, well, my parents would still recognize me. It's like, what if you're burned all over and your parents couldn't even recognize you? What if you lost your genitalia and you're not even a man? And then my heart's still beating. And I'm crying at this point. I'm bawling at 16.
You're
all
16,
of my identity all of my friends. I was like, well, I'm from Chicago, so I at least have pride with like what's going on in the city. And it's like, yeah, and a nuclear bomb went off and your whole city's gone. And I'm just weeping and no one knows you. No one ever knew you. It's just like devastating. But I still felt my heartbeat and I can listen to my heartbeat. And it said, this spark, what you're seeing right now, this is actually you. And this is in everyone. And everything else is put on top of this. Even with all that stripped away, you still feel absolutely complete. Everything else is a story. Everything else can be put on top of this. So you get to actually choose moving forward. You get to put the pieces of your identity on top of this. Now, there's going to be a lot of other people that are going to tell you what to do, but you ultimately as a soul, as a spirit, because you've actually met me now, you've met yourself as a spirit, you get to actually make that choice. So what and who do you choose to be?
I'm going to say at 16, the thoughts that were in my head, I was like, am I pretty? What kind of clothes I'm going to wear? Like that like some
So that was
heavy
happening
stuff.
to me. And then coming out,
That's
I
powerful.
started to look at my own character. So I read comic books is how I learned to read. So I was like, okay, I liked, being brave. I like being honorable. A lot of the characteristics of heroes, taking care of people, being capable, all these different honorable traits I started to put on myself. And when I came out the other side, I understood. I'm like, okay, I'm a man. I understand who I am. I don't have to second guess what I do. I know and I can speak very clearly from a heart-based space because I already have access to spirit. So I understood that. So I would see people in their 50s and 60s still wearing masks. I didn't have them, but I could see through them. So it was being awake in a world where people were asleep. It's very, very different existence from that point on.
Yeah.
Very profound.
And the two books I read right after that were The Power of the Subconscious Mind during my recovery when I, couldn't walk. It was The Power of the Subconscious Mind. So I started to learn how to work with my subconscious mind, be able to program whatever I wanted. And The 1 Hour Orgasm, because I felt a connection to understand and heal the man-woman relationship. That was part of my soul's calling because I had access to that knowledge and wisdom. Because I heard that voice one other time. And that was when I was around 12. And I really asked myself, I was like, wow, I see these stories. And I think my mom and dad were arguing about something. And I just couldn't see it anywhere. And it's like, why is, men and women, why are we like cats and dogs? And what is all this, conflict? And I was told that's why you're here. You're here to help heal that. And I was like, oh, interesting. And that because it was like, oh, there's stories of Christ, Buddha, Muhammad, and these, kind of perfect men and Kuan Yin and Athena and these gods and goddesses. And I'm like, yeah, but there's not really any stories of the perfect man and woman, of how they actually work together and perfectly complement each other and build and support each other. And I was like, yeah, that's why you're here.
Because even like with Adam and Eve, they sinned. That was the whole basis of like this religion, like they sinned. And so
not working together from the
not
start.
working together from the very beginning. And we supposedly come from Adam and Eve.
That story has connotations because the woman was to blame. She gave him the apple.
Yeah.
And,
so we've been divided for so long, the divine feminine and divine masculine. So you're saying that through this, since then you have been working on bridging that gap.
Just studying like crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious. It harkens back to the Kama Sutra and those texts because that was about man and woman. And the divine,
sacred relationship between
and divine masculine and feminine coming together and working well. But no one talks about the actual text. It's just the one book with the sexual positions.
Well, they took just the pictures.
Right.
And like that is, how many times did we say it's been translated into different languages and that's all. That's just one small portion of it.
Right.
Yeah. So that understanding, came to me really early. So I continued to study both relationships, sex, sexuality, because I felt that there was so much, there's so much around sex and sexuality that was kind of the underpinning that no one was talking about, but it felt like it was guiding everything, you know. And quote from Oscar Wilde that I love is, "Everything is about sex except sex. Sex is about power."
Yes.
Right?
We talked about that.
That's a crazy quote, but that's kind of how everybody's operating.
Oh, yeah.
Often subconsciously. Like they're not really aware of it, but it's like, why are you doing that? Oh, well, I just like to feel cute. It's like, there's
really?
that, there's some power.
Yes.
It's also interesting because like sex therapy, that is the school of thought. Everyone thinks it's just about having an orgasm or getting together, but it's actually about men and women communicating and coming together and using their sexual relationship as kind of the first place to look at, like ground zero for what's happening with the larger relationship.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, religion kind of avoids sex at so much, while it's one of the most powerful, and I would say the most powerful guiding force on the planet.
Yes.
Absolutely. Or shames it. Like you couldn't masturbate. Like, growing up, it was like none of that, no sex. And you had to be married. Or so if you like someone and you wanted to like even be intimate with them, you couldn't be intimate with them. But then when you marry them, what if you don't really like this person? And a lot of people were getting married in the religion because they wanted to have sex.
Yeah.
And it's like, then you're stuck with this person you hate, but it's not like you can divorce them until they commit adultery or fornication or, so it's like this cycle that never ends.
Yeah.
And you can't get out. So we got to break free of those chains.
Yeah.
How do we live our authentic self in these 5 important steps? So will you list the steps?
This isn't. So the book kind of covers all the things you need to be liberated mentally, right? So the thing is, the 5 most important things you don't learn in school, because they don't have this in the curriculum. And my goal is to get this part of the high school curriculum. I don't feel that you walk away from high school with life skills. And there's people who don't go to college, and you could go to a technical trade school. But one is health in the human body. How many of us are still finding out new health things that are just like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, I didn't know that. I don't even know how to read my body.
Especially as women. It's
and then
it's never ending.
Here it goes. So it's like health in the human body. We don't know nutrition. We don't understand hydration. Like, just ask any, 12-year-old, 14, 15, 16, what does your body need?
Well, even some
whatever
the
my mom
20-year-old,
what does your body need?
I feel like in my 50s, I've learned my body and I know what it needs. And, when I'm dehydrated or whatever. But some of these 20-year-olds, and they're walking around looking unhealthy, like I don't know what. They probably have no clue.
So health in the human body, communication and relationships.
Okay.
Right? How to make money, how to manage money in the legal system. These are the main areas that if you have a major problem in life, it's going to be in one of those 5. Period. Now, you can get into spirit and everything else, but that's above it. And I specifically kept it out because of separation of church and state. Didn't want to go down that road. I was like, this is just the core. So it's not arguable. You can teach this at anywhere. But if you don't have knowledge of any one of those areas, any one of them would be catastrophic for you if you don't have it. You've signed a bad contract, that could be something that you're just living with forever. That's just something that can keep you broke. And those 5 things all connect to each other. It's a system, right? So you might be making a bunch of money, but you're terrible and you got a gambling problem. Well, that's all that money's gone, and here it is. You might make money, you might manage money, you might be good with the legal system. Your communication and great relationships might be great, but you got a health problem because you're nutrition deficient. And now your health is going. All of a sudden, everything else starts affecting it. So it's understanding these 5 things, building systems for them so you actually understand them, and at least know how they operate. And then you can continue to tweak and say, oh, okay, this makes it feel a little bit better, this a little bit. And I interviewed experts in all the different fields who had more than 20 years of experience, lawyers, doctors, nutritionists. So I interviewed those people to say, okay, what are your best things? If I'm going to just give someone a little workbook at the end of a chapter, what should they focus on?
I'm just curious because you said that it was geared towards adolescence. Is that the age?
So if you're looking at like teens, so it's perfect for. I mean, it's perfect for everybody. Like, because as young adults, I've had adults, and because I work a lot with creatives, it's like they focused on their art, their creativity, getting a job, being a freelancer, and those different things. A lot of times they miss a lot of the other stuff, or they'll get in bad contracts as people take advantage of artists and they're starving artists and things like that. So it's geared towards anybody who's really trying to get a footing on life. But said, and I have cartoons and stuff and make it fun, where anybody from the age, 14 on up, when you start thinking like an adult and you start wanting to break away from your parents.
I know, I need one. I want to give one to my son. Oh, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah. And the feedback from the especially the students that have read it, they've loved it. They feel more empowered. That's the big thing. It's like everything feels like a mystery. Oh, I graduated.
Now what?
No, I got to get. That's exactly how I started off the book. Congratulations, you just graduated. Now what?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now what?
Yeah. Now what?
That's how we start.
Okay. I didn't read the book, y'all.
Now what?
Now what?
We do our research around here. We do our research. So I want to talk briefly about communication in terms of how we are breaking free of these chains of religion and being able to express who we are and truly living our authentic self. Like what you're talking about is you're an anomaly to be at 16 and say, oh, I'm connected with spirit. Who has the ability to do that, especially if you're in a religion like the one that we grew up in? And so I want a testimony is that you are the one many, many years ago when I met you. We actually met Mathias at the same time.
Yeah.
We met Mathias at the same time during South by Southwest.
I think it was 2014 or something like that.
No, 2011.
Okay.
Wow.
Because time.
You missed some years.
Yeah.
It might have even been before that. I just had Tosh. So with that, so you referred me, you started to make me question, because I was married at the time, even question like my relationship. Are you authentically living like in your authentic? And I was like, what? What are you talking about? But you referred me to the book, The Four Agreements by Ruiz Miguel. Yes. And so that book resonates with me. It's like the philosophy of that book is just incredible. And I try to live by that. But then there's the 5 agreements.
Yes.
Which you talked about as well. And I put them, let's see, where are they? Let's read them. The 5 agreements. Be impeccable with your speech. Don't take anything personal. Don't make assumptions. Always do your best. Be skeptical, but listen.
Yeah. Don Miguel Ruiz, that's a mentor right there. Yeah. It's profound.
Very profound. So
it's simple too. But
it's very
damn,
simple.
they're hard.
That's what's most profound, right? When it comes down
when
simple.
It's so simple. So how, in terms of communication, and how do we come out to our authentic self? How do we step into our authenticity after being in a religion where you're held down and you're shamed and you break free? Like how do we step into this power?
Definitely.
Step into this authenticity?
That's kind of the process that I've been building, because I've been tweaking that experience that I had to help guide people into their authentic self, but how to do it at a not so traumatic level. Right? How do you do it without having to do that? Because I've taken people, through that experience first, and they would be like, that was too much. It was like, it took a long time. And that was decades ago, and it's just like, okay, just like dealing with that, their whole system was like the nerves and talk about an existential crisis. Now I'm like having to guide them back into like, it's fine. You could just go to work. Okay,
they're like,
fine. All right. There's therapy. So, not to cause more trauma, but that was some of the early feedback that I got. So that's what I'm working on now. And one of my next books is Your Ultimate Life Blueprint. And that's helping people to connect to their authentic self and then build from that and understand their purpose and to be able to build outward. But I feel that the 5 agreements and find me on MathiasOmotola.com, sign up for my newsletter. I'll get it out. I'll put it on all my socials and stuff like that too. And I'll definitely let you and your audience know as I get that out, because I'm building these tools, right? Because there's a lot of different tools that can help us psychologically, physically, mentally, and just trying to refine it so you're not overwhelmed. Because it can be overwhelming. It's just you're born into this world. It's like, hi, you're a human. It's like you got 5 senses, 6 senses. What else you got? Like, go life, and it's a lot. So
I like that you started here because it's very clear and concise, and someone our kids' age can actually read it and like gain that knowledge to be able to, to do this. So I appreciate you so much for that. And then I just wanted to briefly, I know we're almost out of time, but Ani, like from a psychotherapist standpoint, and we're talking about breaking free of these chains, are there any tools and techniques you can recommend to our audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you are under the oppressive force of religion and you want to get out, right? Then you want to focus on being deprogrammed because you were programmed in it, especially if you were a child, especially if it wasn't an adult choice. And the things to remember with deprogramming is really the brain. We have these 3 really significant parts to our brain. We have our reptilian brain. We have our limbic system, which is emotion, and then we have our neocortex, which is higher thought. And kind of how you were saying earlier, when you walked in and you were like, something feels off, or when you were 9 and you had this feeling that something wasn't right. Well, everything that they were indoctrinating in you was through feeling. Most churches, I've never been to a Jehovah's Witness service, but most services I have been to start with a song. It's the same way with cults. They start with music, right? And that awakens the limbic system.
Oh, yeah.
And then next thing you know, you're fed all of this information that's so much your neocortex, the higher thinking, doesn't even really have time to process. All you know is that I feel good right now. It's tapping into emotion. And our emotional learning is light years ahead of our higher brain learning, unfortunately. So they get you on an emotional level. So to be deprogrammed, it's all about neocortex. It's all about higher thinking. It's all about looking at the religion and starting to learn with skepticism, starting to like open up to the idea of what if this is wrong, and maybe actually find someone who specializes in it. And last but not least, get some trauma therapy, because there's so much shame and trauma that comes down with organized religion that sometimes that's harder to get out than anything. And what ends up happening is you lose the ability to think for yourself. You lose the ability out in life as an adult to have your own original thought. You're looking for your next idol on an unconscious level. And that's the most dangerous thing of all.
You know, something you just said gave me a feeling. Being ex-military, I was in the Navy, going through boot camp, all of those things that you just described, because we used to go to church on Sunday and it was no particular denomination.
Right.
We'd just be in there and they would start with a song. And it was like, and it was funny because one song was like The Rose by Bette Midler. And then, but I think we always ended it with that song, and I'm proud to be an American. Where at least and
that's
it
all
was like that.
system.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of rushed through it, but when you get indoctrinated, it's the lower parts of the brain, the reptilian part, which is survival. And
shame.
then
That's what we use as shame.
Yes. And then the limbic system, which is emotion. It's our hypothalamus and our thalamus and all those things that deal with emotion. That's what they're focusing on. They are not focusing on your higher thinking.
Yeah. And that's getting you indoctrinated to be a soldier and protect this country. You know, without thinking.
So
I was going to give you one other piece.
Okay.
If you have that one, you want to hold that. And that is just the first agreement, and that's being impeccable with your speech.
Yes.
And a lot of times people will look at that and they'll watch what they say externally. But I take it one step further and say, okay, what are you saying internally? Are you being authentic with your speech the way that you talk to yourself? Or are you talking to yourself in an abusive way? Are you saying negative things to yourself? Is it authentically from a place of love as somebody who cares about themselves? Right. So we often are like, oh, okay, well, I'll use that. And I won't say that because I want to be impeccable. I want to be really good with my speech. But are you having negative conversation internally? So if you're checking that and you see that your internal dialogue is really healthy, then it makes it a lot easier to have healthy external dialogue.
So I do have one more quick question about the book, because I actually didn't read it. So I love that, the now what part. But in terms of the children reading it, do you also have an audio version for all of our ADD children?
That's next. I have to record that.
And if you do audio, you have to be the voice.
Yeah,
You have to
I've
be
been
the
told.
voice.
I will
You
do.
have to
I
be
have
the
the audiobook.
voice.
I also have a children's book coming out, and I introduced the character in there with this Peachy and Friends to teach children the
Is
process.
that the character in here?
Yeah, you'll see
love
the
the
character in that. So
illustrations.
yeah,
I
so-
can't wait to read it.
Yeah, and
So
Peachy
good.
goes through just understanding what I learned as an adult that I think so many of us miss, and that's planning, evaluating, taking action, cultivate, harvesting, and enjoying. So it's teaching kids that that's the process of life. It's, it all starts, if you're trying to make any changes in your life, you're trying to learn something new, it starts off with like planning, reviewing your plan, taking action, working on that is the cultivation. And I think in this, TikTok era where everything's so quick and you're only seeing final results, you miss that process of these are all the components of building anything.
I mean, honestly, the TikTok era, and I know we got to go, but that is also feeding emotion.
Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah. It's
So
totally
fast,
feeding
the music
emotion.
and the way they're all behaving now. And
Yeah. It's
Quick
like
emotional
yeah.
hits. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
almost like when you were saying that, it was almost like a hypnosis. Like I remember there's a song that just came to my head. Do you remember Life Without End at Last? That song? Life without end at last. Can you see?
Yeah, that's
with
not
your
song,
mind's
right?
eyes. Do you remember that song?
Nah, I
Okay,
don't.
you were out of it. You were out of it.
Yeah.
So I remember that song, and I'm like, I started like it was like people who were died, and you're gonna see in the
okay.
resurrection, and
Okay.
that was a Jehovah's Witness song, and so it was like I'm like, oh my god, I remember that song, and it's bringing back.
all that. That was
I started-
going. Like, I don't
But
remember
it's
one
a
track.
hypnosis. I know you're like, I don't want that.
There were no bangers in it. No bangers.
But it sounds like you were out at 5 before you were even in.
No, he was
Like,
out at
Mathias
5.
was just
Yo,
hanging
here's
out.
me singing.
Get out of here.
Okay. I don't know about that.
I love it. It's
Okay,
really
wait.
happened.
Before we end, can I just say one thing? I think this is super, super important, y'all, because when we talk, I'm from Gary, Indiana. So
Chi-town
yeah.
Chi-town what?
Hey, GI, baby.
Yes.
But we don't learn this stuff coming out of school, and nobody gives us. Like, I hear other kids from white schools talk about how they were taught how to balance a checkbook and all this kind of stuff. We weren't taught this stuff in the inner cities, and somebody giving you a map,
Guide,
a
manual.
manual, a guide. Like, everybody needs to be buying this for their kid,
Absolutely.
and they need to read it.
And with that being said, I want you to leave the audience with the last thought of the day that of your choice. And then I also, do you have a special offer for our
Yeah,
audience?
actually, so when this drops, you're going to have to let me know the
Yes,
drop
okay.
date on that. I will have for 48 hours it free for download on Kindle. So
Oh,
everybody,
I love that.
everyone in
Okay.
your audience, if you're hearing it
Beautiful.
within
48
that
hours.
time,
Thank you.
yeah, I will make it available.
I want a signed copy for my
Okay, I could,
Yes.
I can do that.
Me
I
too.
got that's why I got my book.
You know, I'm also
I was like,
working.
I
I'm
got
also
my
working on a
copy.
game for parents, so parents can play the game with their kids. So
that's
it's
good.
just
I love
fun,
it.
and then they're learning these aspects. Because my thing was, you don't really need high school if you go through this. Once again, these are professionals that have 20 years of success in every one of the different fields that I look to extract and simplify, so you actually have processes that are practical that you can start applying to better your relationships, to better your health, and you at least know the categories that you need to improve
When you say
on.
game, you mean
Yeah.
like a board game?
Yeah,
Like Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
yeah, exactly.
Oh,
So it's
nice.
gamified. So it's something that you want to do. That's something that's fun.
Fun.
Hit them with that limbic system. Get them with that.
Love it.
You know,
Love
hit 'em
For
with-
our advantage.
Yeah.
Yes. Tell us how
So
to
you be
find.
successful.
So let our audience know how to find you on
Yeah.
social media.
It's
all
just
of your
Mathias
handles.
Omotola. Yeah, so Mathias Omotola, you can find me on everything. And the website, you can go there as well, MathiasOmotola.com, and be able to sign up for the newsletter. That's all I'm doing right now. But I'll be releasing more tools. LinkedIn, hit me on all the different things, because once again, my purpose is to help heal the man-woman relationship and help people connect to their authentic self to help us step into the golden age of humanity. Because when we're working together, men and women, we're coming from an authentic place. We're going to live more in that golden age than the apocalypse and everything else. But right now, we're not set for that. But those are the things that need to happen before we can.
Living our life like it's golden. Living
That's
our
right.
life like it's golden. Hey,
Highest vibration.
Yeah.
Authenticity.
thank you so much
Yes.
for the wealth of knowledge and for your presence and for your wisdom. And I appreciate you sharing your story. It's just incredible. We're all so happy to have
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can I leave the audience with one thing? If I can
Okay,
leave
yes,
with one
yes,
thing,
of course.
is that I want you all to know that you're the writer, the director, the producer, the editor, the post-production, as well as the client and the audience of your life. So while everybody's trying to tell you what's right for you, this, that, and the other, take a breath, see yourself at the end of your life, look back at all the decisions you've made, and make sure that you're really, really happy with what decisions you made. And you can do that anytime you're faced with a challenging decision. Just go back to the end and see, you know what? Am I happy with the choice that I'm making now? And if you are, you're probably going to be really, really happy with the life you live.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
quite
you
a
so
gem
much.
to leave us.
We got to have you come back. This is just not
Definitely.
enough. There's never enough time, right?
Oh,
never
there's
enough
never
time. Well, Cheekies, the next few weeks, we're going to be heating it up, and we're going to continue the conversation on religion and spirituality, and mysticism is up next. So it's going to be good. Please stay tuned. Please like, subscribe, share with your friends and family. We have so much content we want to share with you, and we don't know if you like it unless you tell us. So comment, and we out.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's my time. I'm so alive. I feel